Okay, welcome to another episode of the Aligned Feminine podcast. Today I'm sitting down with Gia, who is a conscious brand consultant, storyteller, and a travel writer currently based in Kenya, dedicating much of her adult life to advocating for small businesses, meaningful travel, and sustainability. Away from the professional sphere, her passions extend to fostering kittens, advocating for their well being and fostering an environment of care. In moments of solitude, she embraces walks in the forest, Pilates, and camping, seeking slowness in a frenzied world. Welcome, Gia. I am so happy to have you today.
Thank you, Akanksha. That was a really beautiful introduction. And I know we've been meaning to make this conversation happen. So
Yes.
I'm really, really glad it's happening today. Thank you.
Yeah, yes. And of course, beyond this introduction, I do also want to add what I added in the other conversation the other day. I don't want to leave that behind. Is that Gia is also one of the OG influencers. And in fact, it's not influencers. Back then, we were bloggers because
Yeah.
there was only like a blog. There was no Insta, there was no Twitter. Yes. So what I was saying was that ever since I discovered your content, you were like for me personally, you were the poster girl of someone who is very effortlessly in their like feminine energy of just, ease and laid back and attracting instead of chasing. And so I do want to acknowledge that because I don't see that very often in women. And I myself have been in my own like masculine energy for the longest time. It's just recently that I have discovered this concept of, there being like a masculine and feminine energy in the same body, and how you need to have just a healthy balance of being able to tap into both when
Mhm.
you need to. But yeah, like an overuse of anything is usually not healthy. So yes, so that is my complete introduction for you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. It's also really beautiful to see your journey
Yeah.
for as long as I've been following you up to now. And I'm just super excited for you. And I'm very excited to see where this journey takes you.
Yeah, so am I. Thank you so much. Yeah, yeah. I'm very excited for my journey and your journey. Like, you live in Kenya now. Right now, you're in India.
Yeah, I'm back home for a few weeks, but
Okay.
we've been living in Nairobi in Kenya for the last 15 months or so.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's really nice. And I think when it comes to like really dialing it down and really slowing down and really like um I guess stepping further away from the yang energy and stepping more into the
Hmm.
yin energy, it's a really beautiful place to do that because um as it happens, I moved because my husband decided to work in a startup in Kenya, and I quit my job. And so I didn't have as much on my plate work wise. And so I spent the first few months spending inordinate amounts of time in the forest, in the green. And
Wow.
we have so much green cover in Nairobi.
Yeah.
So I think just like getting a lot of time with myself, like taking time to like immerse myself, get a sense, like get my bearings, spend a lot of time grounding because, like travel and moving to a different place, a different continent, different country altogether where people speak a different language.
Mhm. Yeah. And also just like quitting your job, that's huge.
Yeah. That wasn't the easiest, and I think
Yeah.
it was a lot harder because I kind of felt like after a really long time, I was finally doing something at work where it was very much aligned with how I felt and how I lived my life. So it felt like a really good fit. And
Yeah.
so saying goodbye, even temporarily, was hard. It felt like
I'm
you were saying
sure.
goodbye to a friend or a breakup. It was not pleasant.
Yeah.
And it was also I think like, and I think you and I've spoken about this before, but I've been reading a lot of Toni Morrison lately, and as women, particularly lately, I feel like we assign and attribute a lot of our sense of self-worth to our work. And
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I feel like when I had this gig and when I was in India and I was doing a little bit, that was like my day job, and I was doing like my social media creative direction, content creation on this side. So I
Okay,
was very choosy and very picky with the projects that I was taking on. And because it was my almost like my full time gig, I wasn't hard pressed to take on as many,
sure. Yeah,
collaborations and partnerships and stuff. But when I had to walk away because I was moving to a different continent and I wanted to give this chapter my all, um, for a little while I felt quite lost, and I felt
yeah.
like, who am I without this company? Who am I without my work? And how do I introduce myself to new people, that I meet? And Kenya is also very much, Nairobi in particular, is all about hustle culture. So the first question
Oh,
people
okay.
actually ask you is, "Hi, what's your name? What do you do?"
Yeah, that's everywhere. That's
I know,
everywhere.
right? But
Yeah.
like in Delhi, because I guess you've grown up, you've lived here. I was born here. I spent a lot of time away from home, but I was born in Delhi, and like you kind of know people through people. So people seldom ask you, "Oh, what are you doing?"
Okay, fair.
You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean? But like when you
yeah,
go to a new country, you have like these questions that come up. And after I had left, I felt a bit lost. I said, how do I answer this question? So
yeah.
I kept finding myself in a spot where I was talking about what I used to do,
Mm,
not what I would like to do, or not where I'm at, because I almost felt a tinge, I'm not going to lie, but a tinge of guilt or embarrassment for not having something before, for not having something to cover me while I left this particular position.
yeah,
And I don't remember when it all started, like this whole attributing our identity and our sense of self and our self worth to our work. Um, but it was huge. So there was a lot of like, spending a lot of time with myself, with my therapist, with a few of my friends who were also like kind of having gap years or sabbaticals because of different life circumstances, medical, moving, all of that stuff. And then
yeah.
trying to figure out with them like what this really means and how can we navigate this without feeling shitty all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I think it starts when we're kids, right? In school, it's like get good grades, otherwise you're freaking useless.
Yeah,
That's where it starts from.
yeah,
It's like, oh, and you have to hustle because your parents will be like, grades are chilao, grades chilao, grades. And that's all you are.
yeah,
And so I think that's where it starts from because you're not given that confidence that you are whole as you are,
yeah,
and your studies are a part of life, yes, but whether you excel or whether you fail, again, that's just a part of your life experience. That
yeah,
is not, your worth is not attached to that. And I think from there it just grows because
yeah.
then it's like college, job. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's
yeah,
almost like I don't know how many more people feel like this because you only get to know once you have these conversations. But I feel like from when you're very little, I mean, you attribute a lot of what you do at what you do at school and how well you do at school to how you are as a human being.
exactly. Yeah,
And then it's also like your co-curriculars, and then there's college and like what major you picked and how well you did. And then there's marriage, and it's almost like it just doesn't stop for us.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And sometimes you just want to pause and you want to be like, I'm Akanksha. You know, I am soft and I am strong and I am brave and I'm badass and I'm
I know, right?
like I contain multitudes within me, and like I have so much inside of me, and like sometimes I might even feel like I'm allowed to change my mind and I can contradict myself and I can do all of these things, but it's conditioning, and it's the way
Of
that
course.
it's
Yeah,
obviously generational, but it just goes on for so long. And I think for a lot of us that even tap into our yin and our feminine energy, even for a lot of people I know who are very much doing the work now, even they find it so hard.
Of
And,
course, same with me. Same with me.
to
Yeah.
break out and to be like, but I'm more than this.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
so much more to my story. There's so much more to me.
Yeah, I remember like because I've been on my healing journey for like about 1.5, 2 years now. And it still comes up for me, the whole piece on like productivity and attaching
Yeah.
my worth to if I'm doing anything or not. Like,
Yeah.
because I've had days where it's during this time there was like I completely shifted my work as well. So I don't really do my influencing work so much. And now it's more into breath work and healing and that
Yeah.
space. And so, of course, in the beginning, it's slow. There's not much work. And so I really had to face myself during those times where I would have days where I had absolutely nothing to do, but just sit with myself. And because I was doing this work, I was also sensitive to what's coming up for me and what's happening
Yeah.
inside my body and feeling those sensations. So it was even more enhanced for me. And I would have days where I'd be like, what the fuck am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And then you have to like sit down and remind yourself and talk to your inner child that no, your worth comes from simply existing,
Yeah.
right? And I love you. Like I give you that unconditional love that you felt that you did not receive when you were younger.
Yeah.
And just trust that things will happen, and things always do. It's a phase. Like sometimes you're in a lull and sometimes you're really like fired up and doing stuff. Again, that's like your feminine and your masculine.
Yeah.
But productivity is a huge thing for me. Like it's been a lot of hard work to sort of systematically like
Break away from that.
separate my energy and my identity from like my productivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. And I think sometimes things happen where you kind of have no choice but to take that step. And I think if I'd continued to be in India, I would have continued to feel this way. But because I had to move to Kenya and, we're there for a couple of years or whatever, the first few months were really hard, and I struggled. I disliked going to places where I hadn't met the people before, because
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I'm gonna have to introduce myself to people. And
Yeah.
everyone's like, I work for a hedge fund, I work with the UN, I work with the World Bank, I'm out there. I'm out there working in conservancies. I'm doing this, and I'm just like, I'm between gigs.
Yeah.
It wasn't nice. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was. I didn't like that I was making myself feel small, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so initially, I avoided all the places where I would meet new people, because I was like, all the people who I need to meet, I mean, all the people that I've already met know my story and I'm
Yeah.
comfortable. But then
Yeah.
it's like, this is a new country. If you don't go out of your house and if you don't go get out of your comfort zone, you're not going to meet more people.
Yeah.
You won't find these opportunities. And so, bit by bit, by and by, with some help from my family and my friends and a whole lot of help from my therapist, I managed
Mhm.
to pull myself out of my house and like put myself in event spaces and speaking opportunities and even like women's circles and spaces where you could talk about this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that was really quite nice. And I think now I'm comfortable. Like, I know that I'm applying to a few gigs now, but now I'm
Okay.
comfortable knowing that I had this time for myself. And while I did do work, it wasn't the same quantum
Hmm.
of work as last year, but that's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Like, yeah. Everything is, yeah, just as it should be. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I feel like sometimes life puts us also in these scenarios, because if both of us had gotten like really solid gigs when we moved there, I don't think we would have integrated
That
and
makes sense.
immersed ourselves in the same way that we have now.
Yeah.
And but I feel like because one of us is doing the 9 to 5 startup life whatever gig, and one of us, like, I was working remotely, I was working at home, I had some days were easy, some days were really busy. we could carve out those chunks from our day or from our week to and a lot of solo activities as well, right? Because like you're by yourself, you don't really know very many people. So just like eating alone, going to cafes alone, like going into the
Yeah.
city archives alone, going to museums alone, doing these kind of things.
Yeah.
And I don't think we do that much. I don't know if you do, but I don't do that much of it back home in Delhi.
Yeah, no, even I don't do it enough. I do it, but I always feel like I should do more of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, that's true. And yeah, like speaking about, introducing yourself, and you're like, oh, what do I say? Because like I'm between gigs. So I used to fantasize about this when I was, you know, not doing anything at all, but I was just being. um, I used to daydream about, if somebody asks me, or like, what's your name and what do you do? I'll be like, I'm Akanksha and I'm like on my healing journey, and that'll be the end of it. Because I think that's a perfectly like viable
It is.
introduction.
It's
Actually, it
absolutely.
would be very refreshing if someone said that to me if I asked them what they did. It'll make for a good conversation. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think more of us should be more unabashed and unafraid to own it if that's where we are in our lives. Like, I think there are going to be more sabbaticals coming my way purely because I want to move to different places. I don't want to be in the same.
Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if for a few months you don't have a gig, it's okay. But I think while we're having this conversation, I also want to put a tiny caveat to say that, of course, like it's not easy for a lot of us, myself included, to not have a gig for a really long time. And I think personally, the only thing that has helped, so ever since I was little, I was very pakka about money. Like, I don't like to take anything from anyone. And I think when I was so I think maybe when I was 24, I stopped taking anything from anybody. And even like my partner and I, my husband and I, we split everything down the middle. And so I think the one thing that's really helped me personally take these breaks or take this time off
Yeah.
from work until I figure out what I want to do next, because content creation, and that too for sustainable brands, it's not enough to tide
Yeah.
you over. Like,
Agreed.
they don't pay
Agreed.
as much. So the budgets aren't there, and because I can't really work for the big brands, I can't rely on that alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the one thing I feel like that's really helped, and I only have my grandmother to thank for this, is investments.
Yes, Queen.
Right?
Speak it. Speak it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I know because you and I have discussed this um briefly a little while ago, but like when uh, I used to be married 10 years ago, and when my marriage wasn't working out, and when we parted ways, I came back home and I was spending a lot of time with my grandmother, and I was very confused about where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And more than anything else, I was really apprehensive about log kya kahenge.
Sure. Yeah.
Because at that point in our lives, a lot of my friends hadn't even started to get married. I was one of the first people in my
Same.
group, right,
Yeah. Same.
to get married. And now I was getting divorced, and it was like, oh my God, it was such a huge thing. And I
How
knew
old were you? Sorry, when you got
was,
married?
I was 23 and a
Okay.
bit when I got
Okay.
married.
Okay.
And I think we filed a year and a half or 2 years later.
Okay.
So I was only 25 or so,
Hmm.
when I had come back home, and it was still quite young, and my friends were still dating and figuring out their scenes and stuff. And I had like a lot of, I thought, well-meaning aunties and uncles come up to me and be like, "Bachcha, adjust kar lena tha, and why didn't you make it work?" All of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I told my grandmother, I said, I know you guys are there, and I know these things happen, and I know we all try
Mm-hmm.
and give it all we've got until we can't anymore. Um, but I am worried about two things. I'm worried that I won't be able to heal in the same place that I got hurt,
Hmm.
in the same city, because it's going to remind me, and I'm going to just keep getting these flashbacks, for lack of a better word, and I will
Yeah.
stop. I will avoid going to places simply because I wouldn't want to repeat the same negative.
Yeah.
I won't want to re-experience that pain.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was really worried about is my financial independence. And I said, now that I've come back home, I don't want to have to, I know I can, but I don't want to have to rely on you guys. I want to do something of my own. And I know that whatever job I get right now, it's not going to be enough, to help me
Mm.
with my nest egg or you know,
Sure.
my fund for a rainy day or whatever. And she did this most amazing thing, which I think has transformed my life. And I know you talk about it as well, but I think every woman should do this for herself, regardless of where she is in her life, is to start investing. So, like, I met with the wealth manager, we sat down, I talked to him a little bit about where I was at. I also told him I knew nothing
Yeah,
about
and that's why you were, hiring these people.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why
Yeah.
I'm hiring a professional. And I said,
Yeah.
come with a good reference, and I need you to be able to help me out. And I said, I only have 50,000 rupees to give right now.
Mm.
That meager a sum. Okay. I said,
Hmm.
that's all I've got. Because more than that, I don't know if I can give, because I don't know
Yeah.
what my next month is going to look like.
Sure. Yeah.
And he said, no problem.
Mm.
And so, bit by bit, month by month, every quarter, every time I got a little extra money, or if I got money from a shoot, or if someone gave me money for my birthday, or, like if instead of going, I used to do some online research assignments and stuff. So
Okay.
if I got a lump sum from a magazine, for instance, all the
Hmm.
stuff that I didn't need, a little bit I would keep in my account, and the rest would go to
Yeah.
light. And
Yeah.
bit by bit, year
Yeah.
by year, it's helped so much,
It's incredible. Oh my
right?
God.
It
Yeah.
has helped so much. And I feel like, my best friends couldn't have this conversation with me. I'm not sure why. My parents didn't have this conversation with me. Um, Nobody, my therapist didn't bring it up. Nobody brought it up. But my
That's so
grandmother,
interesting. Wow. Okay.
and she brought it up. And honestly, this is the reason why, like, I can, I feel like I can choose to take a few months off or 6 months off and, like, have an easy ish year, because I know I have that. And I
Yeah.
know that, yeah. And I feel like anybody hearing this, anybody listening to this should definitely invest. Like, I started with 50,000 rupees, and it's not a large sum of money. It wasn't then, it isn't now, but
Yeah.
you'd be surprised at how far that money takes you. And I think the law of compounding is so underrated.
Yeah.
And I think, like, he told me that gentleman told me, like, you can start with 10,000. And I said, no, 10,000 is too little. I'll give you 50. And he said, you'll be surprised at how far this 10,000 and 50,000 will go in 10 years. And he was
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
you
10
know.
years is a long time.
Right?
Yeah.
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 And so, I mean, 2015 or so is when I started investing. We're in
Okay.
2024 now. So almost 9 years, I want to say, or a little over 9 years. But it's been quite a journey. And I have to admit, I don't know too much still.
Yeah, neither do I. But like, it's
You
like,
trust,
and
right?
it's so much easy now to be able to also do it yourself.
Yeah.
It's like just create an account and put it in like a mutual fund if you have to. Just it's very easy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I think, like, the relief you feel and the confidence you feel once you've done that, like, normally, we were told, like, I remember, like, family members and relatives and friends would tell me, never leave a gig before you have another gig in your lap.
Ah,
And
sure.
and I get what they're coming from, and it made a lot of sense. And in our parents' generation, and our, in their generation, work was also much tougher, and work also
Yeah.
it looked different, right?
Yeah.
And over the last 3 or 4 years that I've worked as a consultant, but also had breaks in the middle, I think I've only been able to do that because of this. So I think, like, as women, we don't have enough conversations about money and about saving and about investing.
Yeah,
But
that's
I
true.
honestly wish we did. And, like, if any girlfriend was to sit me down and tell me, listen, I studied this in college or I did this in my MBA and I'd like to take you through what the stock market looks like, how it works, what is it that you should do? And if you're investing, like, how can you be smarter with your money? Like, whoever it is, I would love you forever because these things really matter.
Yeah.
And yeah, like while I'm comfortable knowing that there's an expert or a professional who knows what he's doing and who knows what he's talking about handling my finances because I don't know enough, I think I'm ready to take the next step where I'm ready to like empower myself with the knowledge so I can do a little bit of it myself as well, like without having to like rely on him for
Yeah.
every small little thing. How do you do yours?
So it's interesting that you asked because very recently is when I have, for the first time in my life, hired a financial advisor for myself. Up until now, it's just been me just like trying and experimenting things and putting something here and putting something there. And yeah, learning from that. I don't invest in stocks, but
Hmm.
I have invested in crypto.
Okay.
And I think that was a phase where I like really went in and I was like reading books on crypto and what it is and like trading. And it's very similar to trading
Yeah.
stocks, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, and very recently I also realized that, for after my divorce, for about, and then after that, when I started my healing journey, like for a year and a half approximately, I I f- I forgot about the whole money part of
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
right? Because I was just focused on dealing with like my own like unprocessed emotions and trauma and all that stuff. And so I completely forgot that that's an aspect of life that you also have to focus a little bit on and nourish and take care of,
Yeah.
because that's how you sort of then invite more of it into your life, right? It's like where
Absolutely.
your focus goes, the energy flows.
Yeah.
And so it's just a few months back where I was like, you know what? Like, I need to start having these conversations again with people. And
Mm-hmm.
so then I had to consciously make an effort and go out and talk to people about like money, people I know who invest. And so I specifically like took out like meetings with anybody who I knew who invests. And I was
That's
like, can
beautiful.
I like, yeah, I was like, can I take like half an hour of your time? And of course, most people are very happy to help. It's not like most, very few people will be like, no.
Yeah.
Those are like really few people.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and so I went out and I started having these conversations. And that's how you sort of activate that energy of money. Also, you're like, okay, I like money. And
Yeah.
so I want more of these conversations in my life so that then I can show the energy of money in a way. I know I'm going into energetics now,
Oh,
but it's
no,
like,
but that's great. Yeah.
yeah, because then you show the energy of money that yes, you are welcome here. Please, like, visit
You're
me.
inviting it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I had these conversations. I gained a little bit of my confidence back with being able to play with money because, I was in that whole place of like safety and I'm not
Yeah.
going to like play and
Yeah.
risk averse.
Yeah.
And so this happened, and now again, I'm kind of like getting my groove back. I've hired a financial advisor. There were some investments, of course, I'd made in the past, which are not doing really well. So, now it's like I have a lay of the land.
And now you want to like turn, like
Yeah,
play with it and like turn it
yeah, yeah.
around and like,
But like you said, having the conversations is, I think, the most important part because once you start inviting that energy, then you automatically pick up on it and you kind of instinctively know, like, yeah, I have to do this or this feels good to me, so I'll go here and I'll do this.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think now that you mentioned it and now that I'm talking to you about this, the other thing that I wanted to share that I've noticed, at least over the last 10 years, but particularly over the last 3 years, is that you never know where advice is going to come. So while a lot of people will dole out advice to you, and some of it will be well meaning, some of it will be unsolicited, some of it will be downright unuseful, some of it will come from their own lens, what
of
they have
course,
experienced
always. Yeah,
always. But sometimes the best advice comes from the most unexpected places. And when I tell people that so I'm encouraging my younger sisters and like my cousins and my batchmates and my friends to invest because they've been working at these massive jobs in like New York and London and all, but they haven't invested. So I'm like,
Oh,
please start
wow.
investing, right?
Okay,
Like,
okay.
you're doing really well and I'm super proud of you and I'm really happy for you, but you need a nest egg. You need
Yeah.
something for later. And so they're like, so how did your journey start? And they all know my daddy. So when I tell them my daddy told me, they can't believe it. And I'm like,
That is
so,
very
right?
fascinating. Yeah.
I feel like you just have to be open. So like I expected that in my head anyway, that my daddy would play the role of a nurturer and a caregiver, which she was and she is. But the fact that she gave me such a beautiful lesson that then goes on to make me feel confident and to be able to like put me in a position where I can afford to take time off between gigs because I'm not in a hurry to jump
Yeah,
to the next thing is beautiful. So I
it's
think we should all
beautiful.
be open to like um, listening because we never know when the next piece of advice that could potentially change you will come. It could come from a friend, a therapist, you know, a grandparent, a parent. It could come from a stranger sitting on a plane, just anywhere.
Yeah, that's actually really beautiful because how I have looked at advice so far is very different from like what you are saying right now. Because for me, it's like, okay, if there is something specific that I want advice on, I'll always at least try as much as I can to make sure that I am going out and asking somebody who has already achieved that.
Yeah. Or is an
They've done it
matter
already,
in that field. Yeah.
right? Then their advice matters because
Yeah.
they've already been on that journey and they're on the other side.
Yeah.
So I look at it that way, but that is also very true actually that it can come from anywhere. That's so
Yeah,
true.
I think like I was on a flight back from Goa in on my last trip back home, and I was sitting next to this gentleman, and we didn't even exchange names, but he told me about how important it was for girls our age to even look at real estate as investment.
Hmm.
And I was like, are you for real? Like, how are you talking to me about this? And I don't know how he decided to talk to me about this. I was reading a book and he's like, I think you should invest in real estate. And I was like,
Oh.
and so I haven't obviously yet, um,
Yeah.
because also a different like different
Yeah.
quantum of money required and all that. And I've always
Yeah.
found it a bit daunting personally. Um,
Mm.
but I've never been like, I've never said no.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I haven't really quite gotten into it. Even with crypto, I've kind of played with it a little bit.
Okay.
But like, my husband and his friends know it a lot more. I feel
Okay.
more, I go with the safer option, and the stock market isn't safe, but I feel
Yeah.
like if my grandmother understands it, like I'll understand. Like she can explain it to me, but like with crypto, when my grandmom and I were looking at it once, she was like, Gia, it's beyond me. And I was like,
Aw.
you. Like, yeah, and I feel like I need her to explain some of this stuff to me. So I was like, if both of us are not feeling it, like
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now, then we
Yeah.
should just wait. And so I have invested a small amount, obviously,
Okay.
because I
Okay.
wanted to.
Mhm.
But like majority of it has gone into the stock market,
Interesting. And
and
do you, sorry to cut you, but do you do it directly into stocks or are you doing like mutual funds?
I'm doing those as well. And I'm also
Okay.
actually like over the last year and a bit looking at a lot of clean industry, a lot of clean businesses. So like
Yeah.
businesses in sustainability, businesses that are uh, more moral is a wrong word or not the best choice of word, but just
But
like
I get
businesses
it. Yeah.
that are trying to do more, like
Yeah.
impact driven businesses that are still that you can still contribute towards, that you can still be a part of in some small way. Like I'm looking to like even change some of my older ones to get into something greener and cleaner because I feel like it would be more aligned with who I
Yeah.
am and the person I'd like to be moving forward. Um, and so, yeah, I'm really liking this conversation, by the way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all this. Yeah.
Yeah. So over to you now.
All right. All right. Coming back to because I ask everybody that I'm doing the interviews with, I ask them, what does alignment with your soul's purpose mean to you personally? Like what does that look like to you? What does that feel like to you? How do you know that you are, yes, I'm in alignment?
I think that's such an interesting question because it's a question I've thought of a lot, but I've never really like elaborated on it or tried to articulate it because I'm like, I'm not gonna have to answer this question for a long time, but here we are. I think the last 3 years or so have kind of shaped things in and around me, and made me realize that I guess I'm on the way and I'm feeling a little bit more aligned than I was, say, 3 years ago. And that's because I'm not letting my past define my future or
Mm-hmm.
my present. So obviously, it means like I've taken this big step to get married, and I took forever to get here. I waited for 5 years, and that for me is a really long time because I'm very impulsive and spontaneous in all matters of the heart. Otherwise,
Okay, okay.
so I would say that's one huge thing that shaped me, and it made me realize that my past doesn't have to define my present or my future. And I had a lot of work that I had to do with myself and, with healers and with therapists to sort of get to that stage. And the other thing is about life purpose and work. And all my life, I thought, okay, I'm going to like, I never felt 100% passionate about what it is I was doing at work because I always felt like it lacked substance and meaning and impact. Like, don't get me wrong, I believe very strongly in the power of storytelling. I believe that our voice has the power to change a lot in and around us. I do think that even with social media, it's such a beautiful platform. But personally, I learned over time, over the last 3 years, that I was not cut out for social media. I couldn't do it as a full time gig. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think realizing or stepping away from that a little bit, but also still maintaining contact with it in a way like where I become more picky and more choosy and more selective about the projects that I take on. But I
Sure.
don't rely on social media so much that I let the dopamine or the lack thereof affect my sense of self and my self esteem to the point that I'm just like gutted if something doesn't do well, or you know
Yeah.
how it is. Like I noticed that
How it used to be for
it
sure.
used to be, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And it doesn't happen anymore now either. So I'm really
yeah.
grateful for that. And I feel like, um, so I would say these two major things in my life, like, stepping away a little bit from social media, like changing my relationship with social media in the way that I interact with it, but also how I take it. And like, while I say this, I also have to say and admit that it's made me meet wonderful people like you. It's made me travel the world. It's given me so many wonderful opportunities that I wouldn't have perhaps gotten if I didn't have a
Yeah,
blog or an Instagram account. So where credit is due, it's given. But I felt that my mental health and my anxiety was at an all-time high when my social media or my Instagram related gigs were doing really well. So it was
understood.
almost
Yeah,
like I had to realize, like, I had to take a step and be like, okay, like, what is the price? And
yeah,
is the price too heavy? Like, and I wasn't feeling like I was able to be present. I was constantly distracted. I won't lie, I was very worried about how the metrics and how things were doing and how things were performing
of
because,
course. Yeah,
and I also used to get very affected by not trolls as much, but people who would say like strange things to you in the DMs and like
mm,
try and do all sorts of like, I don't know, like use your photo inappropriately and
sure.
puppies barking in the background, but it should be okay.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, so I'd love for you to meet her when you're back from Goa.
Yeah, I would. Of course, I love dogs. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I would say these two things. I would say like realizing that in many ways, like, our past doesn't define our future, and this has to do with matters of the heart, but also um like all sorts of love, familial love, romantic love, the love
Yeah.
we share with our friends, the way that we share, and also like what we've been through is not necessarily going to have to define our lives. And so in that way, I feel like I am living, like, there's less dissonance between
Hmm.
me and who I would like to be, but there's a little bit of a distance,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
That's also a good thing to have, right? Because then you know that you have to keep moving in a certain direction. So that
Yeah,
distance is also important, I
yeah,
feel.
yeah.
That gives you motivation to keep growing and evolving over time.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like, I feel like earlier I was a little bit lost, might seem like a harsher word, but I was a little bit more okay with the way things were going, and I was kind of going with the flow and all of that. And now I'm very happy, but I feel like there are still things I would like to do in order to live a more purposeful life. And there are still things I would like to do or be invested in that are more impact driven, and that is less about me and more about we and us and community and people
Yeah.
around me. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that's the I mean, there's definitely less dissonance, there's definitely more alignment, but there is something to work towards. You said it really beautifully. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
How about you?
What alignment looks like to me? That's a good question. I ask everyone, but I think, yeah, while you were speaking, that's what was coming to me. That to me, alignment now would look and feel like that I am able to derive growth and my evolution from everything that I'm experiencing,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? Because for me, for the longest time, I did not have the concept of growth.
Hmm.
Like it was somehow just never taught to me, or maybe
Yeah.
I just never absorbed it. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I was very much like, go with the flow. Life is amazing. Just like keep floating on the surface and life will,
Yeah.
go by.
I
But
feel
then, but then of course, I just, it
things
was,
happen.
things happen and it was just, I don't know what else to use as words except I literally just woke up from it,
Yeah.
right? So it feels like there was this part of my life where I was just sleeping.
Yeah.
And then I woke up and I looked around and I was like, holy shit, like, what have I done so far? Like, who am I? Where have I grown? How have I grown
Yeah.
as a human being, as a soul? And so that is when I sort of, took stock of
Where you're
what
at.
did yeah, where I'm at, and what direction do I want to take my life in, and what is important to me, which is also again being able to serve the greater good of
Yeah.
the planet and the consciousness, because we all make it. It's like all
Yeah.
of us together make it, so what else is there?
Yeah.
And so yeah, just like finding ways to work towards that as I keep growing and evolving as my own person,
Yeah.
and peeling back more and more layers of who I am and my truth is what alignment to me feels like now,
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
And it might change, but yeah,
Yeah,
for now.
same, same, same. No, when I listen to you talk about your journey as well, I'm like, yeah, this is a lot of what I'm feeling, and I have felt this as well. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I completely get it. And you said something really beautiful where you said, um, when you're talking about an aligned life or your path towards a more aligned life or life of purpose,
yeah,
it would be so boring if you were there already. But the
yeah,
fact that you
exactly.
have a
Yeah,
little bit of space, you have wiggle room, you have space to play and to experience and to shape shift and to like transform, but also to work towards something. It's
yes,
so
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. And yeah, shooting off from this, I now want to ask you, how would you define your relationship with your intuition? Do you think you have a strong relationship, like a strong connection to your gut instinct, your intuition?
Yeah, so I think from when I was really, really little, I was always the kid, um, amongst family, friends, and cousins, and just like all the siblings and all the cousins together who felt a lot, who felt too much, and who felt for other people sometimes before they felt it.
Hmm.
And when I was growing up, I was always told that by teachers sometimes by friends, sometimes by ex-partners, that you're too sensitive, you feel too much, you know,
Hmm.
this is just in your head.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, maybe because when you've heard it so much, you're like, ho sakta hai, like
Oh, yeah, yeah, I
maybe
understand. Yeah,
this is my weakness. But over time, and especially over the last, I would say 8 or 9 years, I've begun to realize that this is our superpower.
yeah,
And this is our strength, and this is where it all comes from. And I would much rather, and so to answer your question, I was trying to integrate or find an interconnectedness between intuition and being sensitive and feeling a lot. But I feel like for me, it's all in one container almost. And I would much rather be this person than be somebody who doesn't feel and doesn't overthink and doesn't sometimes worry.
yeah.
And I do think like intuitively I have a pretty good um idea,
Okay.
and I do trust my gut on most things. I have to admit, when I was in my early 20s, I was a bit more, let's see where this takes us kind of
Sure.
person.
Yeah.
So there were things and there were parts, even with my career and with my work, there were bits where I was like, I know this is probably not the best fit for me, but I'm gonna try it anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, I used to do a lot of solo travel, and there were times when I was getting onto planes when I knew that I would come home not feeling as fulfilled, but my
Okay.
hunger or my thirst for that experience, whatever it might be, however it might shape out to be, was so big
Mm.
that I kind of pushed my gut feeling away. Sometimes you know better, but you don't listen to your gut,
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah.
you know? So I think I definitely think I'm a very intuitive person. And it's almost as if, like, sometimes I feel like I wish I didn't have it sometimes, like very few times, because there are times when I get this really strange feeling that gnaws at me at the pit of my stomach.
Yeah.
And it's not always for good things, yeah. So, like, I'm sitting in Kenya and
Mm-hmm.
I have this really strange, uneasy feeling that something is not right.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone around me is like, everything's okay. And I'm like, no, it's not right. And I go to bed and I wake up in the morning and I feel the same thing. And then I call home and I find out things are not okay. I
Okay.
feel like on some level, like, it is nice to know, but it's also
It's,
sometimes it
yeah,
feels like too much,
yeah, yeah.
you
Like it
know?
could be a burden in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like the feeling I would not take away, like
Mm-hmm.
this whole thing of like, someone used the word overfeeling with me when I was quite little. And at that point, I thought it was a curse. And now I think it's a blessing. Like, sometimes I feel like I can feel so much that I can be submerged in feeling, like
Yeah, yeah,
I can feel so much and on so many levels. And for people I have never met. Um, but this intuition thing sometimes can be a bit tricky to navigate when in your heart and in your gut, something is not right,
yeah,
but you want to be wrong.
yeah,
Does that
yeah.
make sense?
Of course it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's happened to me a few times, unfortunately.
But yeah, I mean, it sounds like you do have a very deep connection with your intuition, and it's so beautiful that you have nourished that sensitive feeling part of you and you haven't sort
Mhm.
of cut it out. Like, because for me, like I said, earlier, that I was always in my masculine. I never showed my like sensitive side. I always had my walls up, be like the cool person, the chill, the tomboy girl, and like never show your feelings. That used to be me. Of course, now it's changed. And very recently, I met this friend of mine who I was meeting after quite a few years. And he said to me, he was like, you know, like, and we've known each other for ages and ages, all right, like since school. And he's like, I've known you for so long, but like I never thought I would use the word like vulnerable for you. And like when he
Oh,
said that, I was like, oh my God, like my dreams have come true finally. Finally, I am that person.
yeah.
But
But
yeah.
that's so beautiful.
Yeah, I know. And the thing is, a lot of people will take that probably as an insult.
Yeah.
But but
Yeah.
when I heard it, my heart just expanded and my like all my teeth were out, and I was just like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!"
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. And I think a lot of it has to also do with how people expect us to be, and
yeah,
almost like being too sensitive or being too soft or being intuitive or being vulnerable or sharing in a space where people would feel like you will be judged for that information.
yeah.
Um,
And you're showing like your weakness, right? It's
yeah, absolutely. And like I think I spoke to you about this briefly when we weren't recording a couple of weeks ago, but like when I had just moved to Kenya and I was meeting my friends, I was meeting a lot of people, but we were having some very surface level conversations and we were not being able to like go deeper. And I
mm,
would come home and like my family would call and they would ask me, "How was your day?" And I was like, "Oh, it was okay." But I feel like something is missing. Like we're not being
mm,
able to dig deep. Like I want to know, I don't want you to overshare to the point that you're uncomfortable, but I feel like you need to have you need to have these conversations with at least a few people.
yeah, of course. Yeah,
And so initially everyone was trying to put their best foot forward, and I get it. Like, um, and it was all about achievements and doing, and I did this, and I've been here, and I was VP here, and all of that. And I'm very proud of you, but I want to know when's the last time you sat down and cried. I,
yeah.
I
But
want
that's but it's still so weird to ask people that, right? Like I still feel shy asking that to people, even if it's a simple question, as instead of just being like, "Oh, how are you?" What I actually want to ask is like, "How is your heart doing? Like, what are
yeah,
you feeling in your heart?" But then most of the times I stop myself because I'm like, I'll sound like a total fucking maniac if I ask a question like that.
yeah, no, I think we will definitely find more people over time that will welcome questions like this and will
Yeah,
answer in a way that you would expect them to answer and not like make fun of you or walk away. Um, but I think even for them, like even when they want to be able to have these conversations, I think a lot of it has to do with conditioning, because
of course.
everything in our lives is all about optics. Like,
Yeah.
um, it was really powerful. But like when I first watched Game of Thrones, I think it was Tyrion Lannister. I
Hmm.
can't remember his name. He said, "When I use my weakness against me, when I share my weaknesses in public, when I use my weakness against me, no one can touch me. I'm untouchable." And
Hmm.
that's honestly how I felt growing up, because I was like, if I'm sharing with you, I'm revealing to you what I consider or what society would consider my biggest weakness or my
Yeah.
downfall or my issue or my problem or my challenge or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm volunteering this information to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't do anything with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so fascinating.
you
Wow.
know and
Yeah.
when he said that, and I kept like rewinding so I could come back to that point in the show, and I was like, you know what, this is it, because I think he was talking about his height and his like fighting ability, and I have talked about like anxiety and my relationship with it, and the fact that I haven't, um unlike love and marriage and divorce, but also therapy, and stuff that people wouldn't ordinarily talk about, and they'd be like, why is this person talking about
Yeah.
this? Why should
Yeah.
we have to have these conversations? And I don't think it's important for you to like reveal the nitty gritties or the ins and outs of every situation to everyone, because again, like, I also believe that your story is not meant to be heard by everyone.
Sure. Yeah.
There are some spaces where that feel safer than others.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like if somebody can feel a little less alone, knowing that you can have anxiety and you can live a full life, or that it might take five therapists, but eventually you'll reach a point where you'll be able to check in with one once a week, and you will feel a lot better for it. Or the fact that sometimes, despite your best efforts, relationships fall apart. And I don't mean just husband and wife and boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah.
I mean, even friends. It happens, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, I used to think to and so this bit from the show, it comes to me so often, and I'm like, okay, I don't need to talk about exactly what happened. I don't need to share the ins and outs of my anxiety or my session with my therapist, or
Yeah.
what happened, in my relationship or in a friendship. But I think if you can tell somebody that, hey, I went through something similar, and it took me a while, and I'm healing, and I'm
Yeah.
getting past it, and I can look back, and it doesn't destroy me. I don't want to break down. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I think if you can give someone that strength,
Yeah.
it's all that matters. And like, I remember 10 years ago when I was navigating this on my own, it felt like a little bit of a lonely place because there weren't many people around me who were in that space.
Yeah.
So I felt like the only thing I could do outside of my family, of course, for support and my therapist, was to travel. And I was like,
Mm.
I'm just going to go out there and like immerse myself in different countries and
Wow.
cultures
Okay.
and meet different people. And I actually found it easier to talk to strangers I was never going to meet again on like planes and trains and subways, and like
Yeah.
waiting at cafes for your, waiting for the barista to give you a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
and just be like, I'm hurting, I'm healing, but
Mm.
I'm hurting.
Yeah.
I do this. And yeah, sorry if I'm rambling, but
That's beautiful. No, that's beautiful. And yeah, it is completely true. Like it is, I think, easier to talk to a stranger, especially in the initial part of your journey, right? Of your healing journey, because you don't know how to use your voice. You don't know, at least for me, I'm speaking,
yes,
from my personal thing.
absolutely.
You don't know how to express what you're feeling. Sometimes you don't even know what you are feeling. And so, you don't even know what to name it.
Yeah.
But then as you do the work, then yes, it's because for me it was so tough to have even the slightest like difficult conversation with the people who were closest to me. Like I was so deep in, as we were talking about it earlier, I was so deep in my good girl thing, like don't bring up anything,
Mm.
like don't rock the boat, just
Raffle
be
feathers.
quiet, be
Yeah.
quiet, everything is great and it'll pass. But yeah, it doesn't pass, it gets stored inside, and then of course it comes out later in much bigger ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in the initial part of the journey it is easier to talk to strangers and like completely
Absolutely.
open your heart. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, and again, like sometimes you get such beautiful, um you have such a lovely, like, I think it's also really beautiful to share with a stranger. So I met like lovely ladies in their 50s and 60s, like in Italy and Romania and Paris and Bali, sitting in cafes where they've lived their lives, but now they want to like write books or like do yoga teacher training, or set up a small Airbnb in like Sicily and Cyprus, and like
Wow.
no matter what life is thrown at them, they want to still continue. They want to go on. They want to do this. And when you share
Yeah.
your story with someone and you think, oh my God, this was so bad that it almost broke me. And then you listen to someone else and they share what almost broke them. And then
Yeah.
you see not resilience as much, but like how they navigated that,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really quite beautiful. And like few of these, I call them auntie because they're slightly older than us.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm still in touch with on WhatsApp. We wish each other and stuff.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But a lot of them I never saw again. And I just like, just that interaction stayed
Yeah.
with me. And I think it was really beautiful. And it's really interesting that you spoke about the whole good girl thing because are you older? You have Naina's your sister.
Yeah.
Are you older or is she older?
No, I'm the younger one.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Although, like, most people think that she's the younger one, and publicly, I hate her for it, but it's okay.
No, because I have two sisters, but my
Mhm.
younger sister is my dadi. Yeah, she's like she's like my screen. Like she would tell me,
Mm,
this person is good. You should talk to them. You should be friends with them. Like even before I met my husband, she could tell me from a mile away. Don't even look at that guy. Yeah. You tell the guy also, you turn, you go.
so sweet.
But she's 3 years younger than me. And
Mm,
yeah, and I feel like um with us specifically because I'm the older one, and as all families do and as all kids do, I kind of thought it was my responsibility to not just take care of myself but also to take care of my sister growing up. And my parents split up when I was finishing school, and it's the same experience, right? But
mhm.
both people react very differently.
Of course,
We
yeah,
respond so differently to a stressful life event, to a change, to something that has the potential to like shake the very foundation that you're
yeah,
working on. And so it became almost like the thing that I couldn't ruffle any feathers. I had to do the right thing. I had to do absolutely what was required of me and more. I if I was uncomfortable, I felt like I shouldn't disturb anyone.
yeah,
I
yeah,
shouldn't speak up.
yeah,
And in many ways, like even in friend situations, like when we were growing up and I went to boarding school, friends would say, I want to watch this movie. And I'd already seen it. But my first reaction would not to be like, I've already seen it, guys, let's watch something else. It would be, okay, whatever.
yeah,
And
yeah,
over time, you become, because you've worked on this habit of being the goody two shoes girl or like being agreeable and being nice and being okay with whatever, that you're
yeah.
also feeding this to all the people around you,
Of course,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So if after a really long time you decide and you say, I don't want this, or I don't like this, or I
yeah,
don't like the way you spoke to me right now, or I don't think this is working out for me right now, that shit hits really hard because
yeah,
nobody has ever heard that come out of your mouth, right?
yeah, yeah,
So it was almost like all these years of trying to be this, let's not create any trouble. Let's be good. No matter what, keep your mouth shut.
yeah,
Let's be this person. Eventually, you also realize that your voice is here for you to exercise it. You have to also use your voice. And so the first few times I said no to everyone, teachers, parents, sibling, boyfriend. Oh my God. They didn't know which way to look. They didn't know what hit. They're like,
yeah.
what is happening?
Who are you?
Right? Who are you? And I was told by people, you love me dearly, but you never say no.
Wow.
You always agree, you know? So then I was like, okay, ये तो गड़बड़ tactic है. I have to change this. I cannot be this always agreeable, I will do whatever you all want to do kind of person because it's not serving anybody.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
because you're not showing your actual true self, and that is,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And I remember even so I was 25 around the time that I moved back home after my divorce, or 20, 25, 25, yeah. And at that point, a lot of aunties and uncles, and I don't even know where these people came from. I don't even know some of them. And they were just like, adjust kar lo, beta.
Hmm.
Just keep your mouth shut. And this happens. Or if I got into a job and the job was lucrative, paid really well, allowed me to travel, the job was great. But
Hmm.
I wasn't in it anymore. Like I was not feeling the job anymore. I wanted to do something different.
Hmm.
And they would be like, adjust kar lo, paise aa rahe hain. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get it, but I don't want to do this anymore. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to be, I want to say what I truly feel without feeling afraid that something bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I think working on this voice is, I think that's also where there's a little bit of a gap. Like,
Hmm.
there are still so many things I want to say, and there are still so many places in which I want to be heard, and there are still so many ways in which I want to use my voice.
Yeah.
And I feel like all those years of suppressing it, like I remember, like, if small things, like if you have 10 friends getting together to go somewhere and they want to pick a place for dinner, and you don't like the place they pick for dinner, but you will go with it because it's the easier thing to do. Same
Yeah.
thing, like if my family wants to go somewhere for a holiday and I've just come back from that place, I'll still go there
Yeah.
because everyone wants to go there. And it's these are very small examples, but I think when you use this to start looking at some of the bigger stuff,
Hmm.
and you realize that you are also important, and like your voice is also important. And sometimes I think it's also interesting to see how people would respond to you, you know
Yeah.
when you tell them that this is not working for me, or I'm sorry, but I don't like what just happened right now.
Hmm.
And it's taken, I think this bit has taken more courage than any other thing I've ever had to do in my life, because I found
Agreed. Yeah.
I found it
Yeah.
extremely tough.
Oh God, it's so because I remember for myself as well, just to say no, right, to the other person, I would literally feel physical discomfort in my body while
Yeah,
I waited for them to reply if it was a text or something, right?
yeah,
And most of the times it would be fine because most humans are okay, like, they're not going to react in crazy ways. And so when a not like a so yeah, so and then I would get like a normalish reply to that saying, oh, that's all right. And I would just be like, oh wow, so I was shitting bricks for like 2 hours for nothing.
yeah,
From my own like insecurity that I don't need to like ruffle or make other people feel uncomfortable.
yeah,
And yeah, even when you were saying like, even small things, that is also even for the smallest thing when we say yes, and especially when we want to say no, it's like you're not choosing yourself in that moment, in that small
yeah,
moment. And so
yeah,
your nervous system registers that
yeah,
as that, wow, she's not feeling safe right now to be herself,
yeah,
and it does get stored as maybe it's like a really small amount of trauma, but I do feel like it does get stored in your nervous system. And that is how things add up. And then you get into that pattern of like, yeah, let me just like go with the flow with everything because that's
yeah,
the easiest thing to do. That is where I feel most safe and comfortable.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Mm.
think, um, yeah, I think personally, this is the toughest thing for me to navigate, particularly at work and in work situations as well, because
Okay.
this ties into like saying no, but also asking for what I think I'm worth, because these two conversations are kind of somehow related, because
Yeah,
they
of
also
course.
relate to like you shouldn't ask for too much because then people will think you're greedy or
Yeah.
asking
Yeah.
for too much or money minded or whatever. But no, like you worked your ass off to get to this stage where you know what you're talking about. And granted, there's so much learning and unlearning we do, and the learning never stops. But like you, like someone else, like the many people we know, we all know enough about the stuff that we are doing.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's perfectly okay for us to ask for what we think we deserve. But when someone tries to negotiate at work with me, and when someone tries to tell me, oh, but you know what, like, and that's a little bit of the trouble that I had working as a content creator in this space before I started doing my UGC work, is I didn't want to have these conversations about money. I didn't want to constantly be in a position where I'm like, okay, you can't be paying me this much, but you know what? I still want to work with you, so I will work for free, or I will take it at this amount. Like, I just felt like in some ways, like if it was a brand or a company or or a space that I was really passionate about, which was doing an exemplary work, and I would work with them anyway,
Hmm.
even if there was no monetary compensation, that's separate. But for
Yeah.
people who are making like
Yeah.
mountains of money, who do not want to pay you for your time and still want to like negotiate through agencies, I just felt like I didn't want to have to do that.
Yeah, of
So I
course.
consciously started to like step away, and I was like, there has to be another way. There's got to be like more avenues to make money where, and that's how consulting happened, I think,
Mm.
where I was like, these are my hours and I'm willing to put in XYZ. I'm willing to do more. I'm willing to do offline and online, but like, I want to be taken seriously. I don't want to be, you
Yeah.
know, and yeah, so I think I'm still navigating this one, and there are so many hits and misses. There's so many times where I'm like, I could have done this
Sure.
differently,
Yeah.
I could have asked for more, or I could have said no. Like, there are still spaces where I'm like, I could have said no.
Mm.
But the one space where I've gotten a little bit better at is with my friends. So like socially, I know I also think you feel the same way, but I could be wrong. So like, if I do two night outs,
Yeah.
um, in any city, it doesn't matter. The third night has to be in my bed. you
I
know,
can do one night
yeah,
out.
yeah.
Not
Okay,
two.
one or two. Yeah, I'm with you. But like, even with the people I love the most in the
Yeah.
whole world,
Yeah.
and in some cases, even in like big family gatherings, I can do 1 or 2 days tops. And on the
Yeah.
third day, everyone knows my battery is low. Like, it's like at 0 or 10.
Yeah.
And I need that time to recharge. And I think that's the one space where I've gotten better at it. Like, I'm like,
Mm.
I'm gonna be no good. I won't be fun. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna be good company. And we hung out yesterday, and I'm gonna see you guys on Friday, and can we do this? And 9 out of 10 times it's been well received, because they're like,
Yeah.
oh, she's just like this, like, she needs time to recharge.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, like, believe whatever you want. This is me. Like,
Whatever works. Yeah.
whatever works for you, but like, I need this time for myself. And I think like this bit for me has, I don't know when it happened, maybe slightly before the pandemic, but I've been able to do that.
Mm.
And I pat myself on the back for this, because I feel like I've been able to like meet people when I want to, but also have time for myself, which has been really, really nice, because I
Yeah.
really enjoy time with myself.
Yeah, same, same. Oh my God. Like I've become a total homebody now. It's like not even I'll do like one night out in a month now.
Yeah,
Otherwise I like to be in bed by like 9:30, 10, and that's
that's
my
amazing. What time
that's
you
my day. So in the summers I wake up like nice and early, 6:37, but
get?
I mean you're in Delhi now.
Yeah.
It's too cold. So I am now I go to bed also a little late because of that, but
Yeah.
now I'm waking up at like 8:39.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
really hard to get out of bed these, and I don't know what it is. It doesn't get half as cold in Nairobi, but it's
Oh,
super
really?
cold. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's super cold right now. So I'm always like bundled up, and I'm like, if the sun is out and you want to go for a walk, I'm in. If you want to meet for lunch, count me
Yeah.
in.
Lunch. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
a lunch girl. I'm a
yeah.
lunch girl.
But if
Yeah.
it's dinner, I don't know.
Yeah. Same, same. All right. Okay. So, wow, we've already spoken for quite some time.
Oh wow, I just
Yeah.
started.
Okay, now I want to ask you about what your experience with the breathwork was with in
Okay,
my container.
okay, sure.
Had you done breathwork before that? I don't remember.
Yeah, so I'd actually done breathwork, but many, many, many years ago with a teacher in Bali in Ubud, I think in
Mm.
2016 or so.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay.
And that was really intense for me because it was around the time 2015, maybe. It was on the time of my divorce. So it was like
Okay.
really, I was feeling very raw,
Sure.
and there was a lot. This particular time, actually, for me, when you invited me for the breathwork, the experience, all that you have to offer in your container, I thought it was really beautiful. I thought personally, I was a bit worried that I would be a bit distracted or a bit disconnected because we weren't doing an in person session. But it wasn't like that at all. I had like headphones on, and I think when you guided us, I became very perceptive of the different sensations in my body. So like I kept the duna, or like the shuka, which is what we use in Kenya. It's like a blanket.
Okay.
And there were bits, so there were times during the period, because I was lying down through it all, where I felt cold, and there were times when I felt warm. I think it was also a very beautiful mindfulness exercise for me personally, because I became even more sensitive of where I was feeling tingly and where I was feeling slight, um, like this feather touch. I can't
Mm.
explain the sensation, but like I became so aware of the different sensations in my body. Um, I was very affected um, by the news, and around that time, I think, when did we do the session? I'm trying to remember.
Uh,
November?
was it in November? I'm not sure.
November or December?
It should be December, I think.
Yeah. I think just the state of the world and the
Yeah.
news and stuff like that. So I was not feeling, I was trying to find ways to regulate my nervous system, and I was trying to find ways to like self soothe. And that night, and like my sleep cycle wasn't the best. And that night, I slept like a baby. But what I really enjoyed, and what I wanted to tell you also, was that apart from me being a whole deal more perceptive and more open to the sensations and not being afraid
Mm.
where it was taking me, um, I also really liked the guided meditation because of your voice. And so I've actually heard a lot of people. So I use Headspace and Insight Timer from time to time. And I do Yog Nidra occasionally. And sometimes I do the sound healing ones, and like, those gratitude meditations and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think for me, voice is a very personal
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there was something about your voice, and I wanted to write it down there, but I was just feeling so
Mm.
much that I was like, I'm just gonna share it like later. But there was just something about your voice that that disarms people.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you.
Honestly, and it's not just like in, I mean, of course I felt it during the session, but I also feel it like in a phone call, which is why I feel like you were made for this. So,
Oh my
um,
God. Thank you. Oh my
yeah, because I think
God.
like voice is such a powerful thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like I don't know if everybody feels relaxed with every kind of voice, but like
Sure. Yeah.
me, if it's a male voice or a female voice, like the tenor, the pitch, the intonation, how they choose to enunciate, what poses they take, all of those things like
Yeah.
make a huge difference. And like very, very sensitive. So
Yeah.
for me, like your voice just automatically, like within a few minutes or sessions, I think I'd spent like a long day watching news and reading articles and also like climate environment stuff.
Yeah.
And I was feeling like very discontent, but also very apprehensive about the state of the world. And it was almost like that 1 hour, those 50 minutes, it gave me a window of what my nervous system might feel like if I was to continue to carve out time for these sessions,
Hmm.
because how my nervous system felt, how my breath felt, how my heart felt, um, like your pulse, even body temperature wise, regulation wise, my hands were less clammy, like all of it. Like I thought it was brilliant. But for me, the thing that stood out the most was your voice. And I think you should totally, totally, yeah, use
Thank
it.
you so much. That is such a huge compliment. Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
But please use it as often as you can and as many ways as you can. Because I mean it. Yeah.
Hmm. I will. Oh, thank you. All right. Okay, so wow, we have spoken for a lot, and there's
Yeah.
still so much I want to talk to you about. So obviously, this means that we will do another episode separately. Okay, thank you so much for being on the episode, Gia. I enjoyed this conversation so much, and it felt so like smooth, and like we've been talking to each other for years on years, and we have actually never spoken for this long before.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And
thank you
thank
so much for
you.
taking the time and being here, and I will have you again for another episode for sure.
Definitely. And have the best time in Goa and let's meet when you're
Thank
back.
you. All right, bye.